This episode of Wheat Pete's Word is brought to you by Syngenta. Growing wheat in Western Canada, Miravis Era fungicide for Fusarium combines two active ingredients and sets a higher standard for disease protection. And with Miravis Era, you're also getting excellent control of late-season leaf diseases. Visit syngenta.ca for more information.
Good day and welcome to Wheat Pete's Word here on Real Agriculture for Wednesday, June the 18th. On this episode of the Word, my typical updates to kick it off with, and then agronomy answers. We have just so much to get through. Let's go! And to start off, a huge, absolutely huge congratulations to Dr. Peter Sikkema, who was named to the Canadian Agricultural Hall of Fame. There isn't a more deserving individual that I can think of. Peter's work in weed research has been such a joy to use and so applied to all of crop agriculture across North America, but certainly in Ontario. He is the star. Congratulations, Dr. Sikkema. Very, very well deserved. And hey, I didn't realize this, but thanks to my good friend Mark from Delmarva, June is Men's Mental Health Month. And he sent me a nice little, I think, TikTok or Instagram or something, but what really hit me was one of the sayings was, stop telling men to man up and start asking them to speak up. And oh my gosh, right now the stress level is unbelievable. We have soy replants and it's late. We have the sins of early planting on corn, the drought stress symptoms on corn all over the place, even though the corn is just hitting the rapid growth phase. We have weed control issues. The markets are just brutal. There are stressors just unbelievable in agriculture right now. Take the 15, do the wheat peak thing, pick up the phone. It's going to rain. When it rains, take that few minutes, call somebody and just say, hey, how are you? And let them speak up and get that off their chest. Let's keep our mental health up the same way we keep our soil health up. All right, and just while I talk about the weather, what unbelievable. So about 50% of Western Canada and the Western Pacific Northwest, that grain belt, the spring wheat belt, if you will, 50% of that is extremely dry and needs rain desperately. Meanwhile, we go to Missouri, and both Missouri and Kentucky are at wheat harvest. I haven't heard yields yet. Come on, Phil, give me some yields, Brad, out of Missouri. But in Missouri, it is that wet that they are putting tracks on their wheat combines to combine the wheat in the field. And you just go, man, that is bizarre how different that can be. And meanwhile, it's June the 18th. It will be the first day of summer on June the 21st. And guess what Mother Nature looks like she is prepared to do for us? We are going from the beautiful, beautiful low 20s, high teens that my cereal crops love to these ridiculously hot, humid conditions that useless corn and soybean crop like. It will help the corn and soybean crop. They need it, but it is going to hammer the wheat crop. And so Brett asked me, which is going to get hurt worse, winter barley or winter wheat? Well, winter barley is quite a bit further through the critical growth period. For us here in southwestern Ontario, we are about 11 days past when we sprayed our T3 fungicide. And if you remember the critical period on wheat, it's 2 weeks before anthesis and 10 days after anthesis. So we're just past that critical period, but when it goes over 30 degrees Celsius, it really does hammer wheat yields. If it goes over 35, it's even that much worse. So I hate this heat. I don't want it until the 1st of July is what I said, but it is going to get hot. That's just the way it is. And just before I get into agronomy answers, Minnesota did a really awesome article looking at hybrid rye production. Hybrid rye is becoming a real crop in much of North America, across the eastern and western parts of the cereal production area, winter hybrid rye. And management becomes a bit of a question mark. So Minnesota published a beautiful study. I'm not 100% sure how transferable it will be to Ontario conditions, because Minnesota is a bit drier, but we are going to link it in the post. If you are considering hybrid rye, I really encourage you to read that article. The key takeaway is that hybrid rye doesn't need as much nitrogen as you would expect. And under Minnesota conditions, man, fall nitrogen, which is this in the Western Canada, in the dry climates, they love fall nitrogen. Get that on, get it out of the way. On hybrid rye, you do that, you just get less yields. It takes much less nitrogen spring applied to get a higher yield. I like those answers. And the bottom line on nitrogen, instead of the 130 to 180 pounds of nitrogen that industry has been generally recommending on hybrid rye, the research says 60 to 90. So that's 50%. You get less lodging. You still get virtually the same yield. That's win, 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 man. Nice article. Give it a read if you get a chance. All right, want to move on, and let's start with soybean replants. So a great tweet from my good friend Kevin in Essex County, and he just says, Peter, what do we do? Because the soybeans, the beans are not dead, but they are simply stuck. And what I don't totally understand, it wasn't just Kevin. Chris sent me an awesome picture of a soybean seed, and it's just frozen in solid clay, but not really big rains after it. Ken Curra from BASF at the breakfast meeting yesterday said his experience on the Niagara clays is the big rains we get, that's a crust, you're done. But he says if you get multiple cold rains on clay soil after planting, even though they're nice and gentle rains, you think they're perfect, that clay soil still goes to a brick. And it's exactly the way that it seems. Kevin's saying, they're not dead. My experience is if I run over the emerged ones with my John Deere drill, I kill them. That has not been our experience, Kevin. I'm surprised that the John Deere drill would do that, or any single disc drill, whether it's Case IH or John Deere or whatever. Typically, it's like rolling soybeans. The depth gauge wheels just roll over top them, and they pop back up after a while, and you're all good. But as my friend Chad Anderson from the Breadbasket of Ontario, Lambton County would say, when they are stuck in that clay concrete, you just have to replant. They are never going to make it, even if it rains, when they're stuck that bad and the hypocotyl is already that swollen. Oftentimes, they just never make it. So get out there, replant. It's just about all you can do. And from our soybean specialist, Horst Bonner, actually doing some research plots on Wheat Pete's farm, and he sends me a picture and says, Peter, residue is the enemy. And yes, Horst, residue is the enemy. So we had that April big gusher of a rainstorm, April the 2nd, and I had corn stalks, and in the low draw where we have 3, yes, count them, 3 municipal drains under the ground, couldn't take all the water. All the corn stalks left in, 60 or 100 feet wide across that. Thankfully, not much soil erosion, but where the residue is gone, the soybean stand is so much better in the rest of the field, which was one pass with an RTS, so not quite no-till, but almost. And the stand is better. The beans are twice the size. They are 1 full trifoliate ahead. And we need the residue to stop the erosion. That's a perfect example in my field. But man, in the spring, we just want to get rid of it. So we have to figure that out better. But residue is the enemy. And one of the other things that was discussed, and I think is true on a year like this, early no-till, even when the ground is fit, that early no-till, if it doesn't warm up, then it's cooler under the residue. We got more slugs, we got more seed corn maggot. And the other thing is that you have to have patience for fit ground or soil conditions in no-till. My good friends Barry and Tyler at Onondaga, they would be the quintessential example of people that have unbelievable patience. I can't quite get there. I wish I could. But if you're going to no-till soils, you need to have patience. And on a year like this, it's just a bit of a struggle compared to not having that residue there. So there's some tricks. Then we have to get better. We get the residue out of the row area. Maybe we plant 15-inch rows between the 30-inch corn stalks, or we go to 20-inch corn rows and plant 20-inch beans between. I think there's some ways around this, but boy, this residue thing has really, really beat the soybean crop up in 2025 here in Ontario. Meanwhile, Barry also sent me a picture of his wheat field. And his wheat field has cracks in it 2 inches wide. Talking with growers on sand soil, the wheat is burning up. The wheat crop needs rainfall desperately. Meanwhile, Barry's soybean field, right beside the wheat field, the tiles are still running. And that's all evapotranspiration. The wheat crop right now is probably pumping out about 1/4 of an inch of water per day through transpiration to make that big wheat crop that we want. The soybean crop, meanwhile, it's doing nothing yet. It's not big enough to hardly transpire any water, and that is the difference that we've had. The growth period for wheat, it's used up the available soil moisture. The soybean crop and the corn crop just aren't there yet. All right, move on. Talk about weed control. James from Wisconsin saying, horsetail. Peter, man, I've got a mess with horsetail. They are enlist beans. We burnt the burn down was glyphosate in Liberty and enlist, and it took the top off that horsetail crop. Just beautiful. And all that happens is that the horsetail comes roaring right back. So I'm going to burn it off again, but how do I get control? Will another Liberty plus Enlist treatment in the emerged soybeans do the job? How much yield loss do I suffer? How do I get control? So James, horsetail is like perennial sow thistle. I talked about it last week. It is not something you can control or eradicate in 1 year. Well, actually, almost no weed can you eradicate in 1 year, but some of these perennials take much longer. Horsetail has nutlets in the soil. They are what germinate and grow, and there's a bunch of them down there, and they germinate over time. So it is a long-term process. The Liberty will burn the top off again, and anytime you can hit it, you should. Yield loss from horsetail typically is not horrendous because horsetail is not a really competitive weed. It's not like having ragweed in a soybean field. Nonetheless, there will be yield loss. But in terms of getting control, the best products are flumetsalam. That's James is from Wisconsin. I am not sure what product carries flumetsalam in the U.S. Broad Strike here in Canada is flumetsalam, and that's the best in corn and soybeans. If you have bad horsetail, if you can use Broad Strike in the corn, Broad Strike in the soybeans, come back in wheat, and MCPA in wheat does a really, really good job. And you just keep taking the top off. You keep hitting it, you keep hitting it, you keep hitting it. The problem with things like Liberty, they take the top off, but it will just grow right back. The beauty of the flumetsalam is that it actually does seem to give longer-term control. It isn't as pretty when you first put it on, but when you come back next year, it has killed some of those nutlets in the soil from the way that it looks because the horsetail simply does thin out. Gene from Manitoba saying, hey, Peter, alfalfa escapes in spring wheat. How do I control them? Simple, 2,4-D. It's really interesting how different hormone herbicides work differently on different crops. When it's alfalfa, it's 2,4-D. When it's red clover, it's dicamba. And why that is, I don't know, but that's the easy answer. 2,4-D should do the job there. And annual ryegrass. Man, drive around and start looking in winter wheat fields and see how many winter wheat fields now have these tufts of something sticking up. In Michigan, it will be windgrass. Here in Ontario, it could be bluegrass, but the bluegrass doesn't always make it above the winter wheat crop. It can. But man, if you're seeing lots come above it, it could be orchard grass, it could be brome grass, but most of the time it will be annual ryegrass. And annual ryegrass is really starting to give us a lot of grief for two reasons. The first is that we do have some glyphosate-resistant annual ryegrass. It's a Lolium species, or genus rather. It's a Lolium genus, and that genus is the most likely to develop tolerance to herbicides of any genus that I think we have. In fact, rigid ryegrass, which is a cousin of annual ryegrass in Australia, I'm told is resistant to 21 different modes of action. Unbelievable. So to get glyphosate resistant annual ryegrass is not a surprise. But the fact that you didn't kill it in your soybean or your cornfield with your 1 liter of glyphosate in your burn down or in your early application does not mean that it's resistant. It's a most intriguing species. When it's tiny in the very seedling stage and it's not resistant to glyphosate, you can kill it quite easily. When it hits stem elongation, that rapid growth phase, glyphosate just doesn't seem to have any activity at all. But once it heads out and before that seed is mature, then it again becomes susceptible to glyphosate. So if you didn't get it with your first burn down application and it's starting to come to head, at least take out a hand sprayer with glyphosate in it and spray some plants to see whether or not, you can send them for genetic tests, but it's much simpler just to spray them with glyphosate, see if they die, and if they do die, then you can hit the whole field with glyphosate at head timing and actually prevent them from setting seed and becoming a bigger problem down the road. Well, we're on that. Adam tweeting out some awesome pictures, and Adam Pfeffer from Bayer Crop Science, farms at St. Thomas, just a great guy, lots of fun to deal with. He likes poking fun at wheat Pete. And he pokes fun at wheat Pete, and he shows the pictures, and he says, gonna tell you again, Peter, it's what else is in the jug. You always say it's just glyphosate, but it isn't just glyphosate. What else is in the jug matters. And Adam, I totally agree. It's a really interesting picture that Adam tweeted out because the Roundup WeatherMax has given much faster control of the weeds that they sprayed than the generics. Now, one of the comments in the Twitter feed was, this was, 7 days after application. The comment was, show us 14 days, show us 21 days after, and maybe we won't see such stark differences. But I will say that in that discussion, I was very surprised at how many people said, done with generics, have seen such better control where we use the best possible formulation. They're all 540 grams of glyphosate per liter of product. But what else is in the jug is tremendously different, and it does make a difference in how that product gets into the plant and how it mixes in water. And a formulation is such an interesting science, but that matters. So do your own tests, but wow, it really is an interesting topic for discussion. Before I leave weed control, Ryan from Alberta saying, Peter, we talk so much about resistance. I mean, I just got done talking about annual ryegrass and resistance. But what about tillage? And Ryan actually went through quite a nice dissertation in the rotation in Alberta, and they're using different modes of action. But his comment was, is that enough? And so from a herbicide standpoint, Ryan, absolutely. You use multiple modes of effective action whenever you can. You rotate those modes. You change crops up. You try to keep the weeds off balance. But you still are likely going to end up with resistant kochia to everything that you use on it, because that's what weeds do. You put selection pressure on them, they're going to try to overcome that herbicide so that they can continue to survive. When we were on the Yen tour, really phenomenally interesting. Blackgrass is their problem weed. It's resistant to virtually all of their chemistries. It's a winter annual foxtail, and when it gets in wheat, it just decimates wheat yields. They use tillage beautifully as another mode of action. So they will do everything they can to keep the blackgrass population low. They will use all their herbicides. They will do tillage. They will burn it off with glyphosate because they don't have glyphosate-tolerant wheat, and it has not yet developed resistance to glyphosate, but they'll burn it off late September. They'd really like to plant their wheat late September, but because of blackgrass, they can't. It doesn't germinate late into the fall nearly as much as it does early fall, and they will plant late, give up yield. October the 17th was an example that they would plant and have all the blackgrass gone, and then use all the chemistries they can, but still it will build up over time, and in 5 years, once every 5 years, they will moldboard plow, and they will plow all the blackgrass seeds down, and they'll plow up some old blackgrass seeds, but viability will be greatly reduced. They say 90% per year they drop in viability. Some of the farmers questioned that number, and so they basically start fresh. The big blackgrass seed population is down there for 5 years. It won't be as bad when they bring it back up, and now they're starting off with almost no blackgrass seeds. So tillage is another mode of action. Hey, just while I'm on that, I mentioned the Yen trip again, the UK trip that I was on. There's so much to learn there, and I never ever get through it here on the Word. So what I'm considering doing is a special Word episode on my UK learnings from the Yen trip there. If you're interested in that, let me know how you'd like me to do that. Maybe on a Friday I would do a special episode. Would that work for you? How would I get the word out? And Paisley, my great brother, is going to say, well, Peter, you never get through everything. Why do you keep asking for more questions? Paisley, I still want more questions because questions drive me, and if I don't answer them on the Word, I will email people back with the answers. So Ryan, if I didn't answer your question on tillage, then for sure, email me again. I will answer that way. Hey, last but not least on stripe rust, because I think this is really important. So we've had all sorts of stripe rust, and what's astounding is that 25R64 in all the trials says it should be relatively tolerant. Nothing is totally resistant, but it should be pretty good. And instead, it's looking like it's very, very susceptible. So there's a huge question on whether or not the stripe rust race has evolved. Remember that I mentioned stripe rust in the UK has evolved to overcome the YR15 gene? We're wondering if that has happened here in North America. And the answer is we don't know for sure. The stripe rust in 2024 was still susceptible to all the genetic traits that we have, so that wasn't the problem in 2024. But 2025, Ontario shouldn't have had an issue. We have a massive issue. 25R64 should not have gotten it as bad as it did. We had a massive issue. So we're sending those samples away. The Royal We, it's Albert Tenuta, who is doing that on behalf of Ontario. I'll tell you what we learn when we get back. But a great question coming in from Rob Miller of BASF. Spring wheat. Spring wheat is susceptible, just as susceptible to stripe rust as winter wheat. But all of the spring wheat varieties, we have ratings on how they react to stripe rust. Do we trust those ratings? And Rob, the answer is, I don't know. I think you trust the ratings, but if I'm a spring wheat grower in Northern Ontario, in Quebec, in the Maritimes, and we're looking at the winter wheat crop going, that's a disaster, I'm going to be a 2-fungicide user. It's like buying insurance, and on a year like this, I think that insurance money could well pay you dividends. Now, on the other side of it, if we go to 35 degrees, the wheat yields will crash on spring wheat, and the stripe rust will stop, and then you'll have spent money that isn't necessarily good money. But at this point in time, I think the risk is high. The reward could be very high as well. So I'm going to be a 2-fungicide user on spring wheat crops throughout Eastern Canada. And with that, oh, look at that. I'm 24 minutes. That's it. That's all on behalf of the team here at Real Agriculture. This is Wheat Pete with the Word for Wednesday, June the 18th. Hey, keep the questions coming. Keep the comments coming, the feedback coming. And I will continue to talk way too long next week. See you then.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Wheat Pete's Word, brought to you by Syngenta. Miravis Era fungicide sets a higher standard for Western cereal disease protection with 2 powerhouse active ingredients for fusarium head blight and late-season leaf diseases. Make this your golden era with Miravis Era and earn Western Partner Program rewards on qualifying purchases. Visit syngenta.ca/partner program to calculate your rewards today.